Hello, welcome back to Back2Hoops. This is our part 2 video on our mailbag questions. Part 1 is going to be linked in the description, and we're going to put a link up at the end of this video. So if you haven't watched that, maybe check that one out first. Obviously, being joined as always by James.
Hello.
And Jay.
Hello.
Hello. So let's just get straight into it. Last one, we sort of finished off. We had a couple of questions about tactics. I've still got a few more of those to go before we get on to your views on the game. So the first one's coming from someone just asking, what do you think about set offensive plays? I think they're meaning in the terms of American football style of plays as well.
So I'll start. So I think set offensive plays in the American football to Quidditch comparison don't really work just because beaters are such a disruptive factor. And the pitch is so small, you have less space to work with. How I've always seen it is similar to basketball or lacrosse, where you have a set sequence of moves, but you can riff off that and be independent. So instead of seeing it as a set play, seeing it as a base play, but then if an opportunity arises within that play for a better opportunity to take, then you go with that. So if you say, I'm going to be running this route down the right and you're going to be running the crash ball, I know as a ball handler and as a beater where I need to be looking for the quaffle, but I'm not only going to throw it to that. I think if you become too reliant on something happening, you can't be very creative, and Quidditch needs creative players to make something happen. So I'd say it's best to have a base play that you riff off and experiment with at training and in game, so people don't get too stuck in the routine of what they should be doing.
James?
I kind of agree. I'm not a fan of completely fixed set moves. I think they're too easy to read after the first time and then adapt as a defense. So things like Hatchet from Canada, that got picked up by the Team UK coaching team even before the first game was played. And so the coaches briefed us as the team what we had to do in those positions, and it was just pretty much immediately countered. Same with Rhinos at EQC last year. They would do their move. It would involve some sort of switch at the back. We knew it was coming after the first one, and we adapted. So I'm not a massive fan of that because they're too easy to read. What I prefer is kind of like how Jay says, is option plays. So I've got everybody kind of running, everyone on the same page in terms of where we want the ball to be when we're attacking. Do we want it to be attacking from behind hoop? Do we want it attacking the left or the right or whatever? Everyone knows roughly that kind of positioning. And then they can run whatever route they want out of a load of different options. And you just pick the pass that is the best one in any given situation. So it might be, we've taken the ball to the right wing, and everybody knows that there'll be either a cut to the far hoop or a cut coming short, and it's on to the players to know which one of those makes more sense for this position based off beat positioning, defensive positioning, whatever. And if you have that kind of understanding, that's much better than going run left 3 steps, cut up 2 steps, whatever.
So it's a bit more about game intelligence, playing what's in front of you than this is what we're going to do robot style.
Essentially, basically, yeah. Like, I think you start off a bit more robotic because you show people what's a good running line is. But once they've understood that and they've kind of got that internalized, it shouldn't need a call to do it, if I'm honest. I think you should just know that these are your sort of like 4 options as a receiver. I'm going to pick the one that works the best. I do think it's slightly different for defense. Having set plays for defense, I do think is better. So a call to press out and try and turn over a carrier is helpful, so everybody's on the same page for that. But yeah, for offense, I'm not a massive fan of them very often.
Okay. Obviously, I think we sort of touched on this in some of our other videos, actually, this next question. But you guys are at the sort of top of the coaching tree. What do you think are going to be the next trends, the next things that, where's the sort of gameplay going within Quidditch?
So a lot of it will obviously come down to if we have any new rules coming in next year. if we go under the assumption that there aren't any, because you can't necessarily know the future, not on the rules exactly, whatever, I think a lot more goals will come from teams that are able to exploit a zone defense. So we've seen the shift of most teams going from compact to some sort of 2-2 zone. That's the premier defense, and that's the most commonly used defense by teams that are good at the moment. So the team that can exploit that by finding the chinks in it, finding angles of attack, and to exploit potentially a badly moving zone is going to be the future. We talked about it, it's called round the corner passing, attacking the zone from the baseline of the hoops, forcing a team to transition round and then passing very quickly around it. I think that is where we're going to see the biggest tactical shift, provided there are no massive rule changes.
Fundamentally, something that I'd like to see more of, and it sounds really simple, is just people being able to throw the ball while they're running. A lot of times when people are throwing the ball while moving, it's a push pass or a very slow pass or a very loopy pass. But we're very static. We set our feet to throw quite a lot, which makes the gameplay very easy to read for the opposition. I'd quite like to see more players working on throwing on the move. It's certainly something that we drill a lot at Team UK, and being able to throw the ball and then immediately move after they've thrown as well, because a lot of people's throws stand still and then make a decision. So I think it is looking at the development of ball speed, being able to throw on the run, catch on the run, keep moving, and then throw it to those constant moving pieces, which seems like a really simple structure, but it's something in the UK that we haven't quite managed. And that leads to the ability to be able to shoot more and open up those offenses a lot more to be varied rather than attacking the same way. So I'd like to see a lot more throwing while moving and throwing from different body positions.
From a defensive point of view, I'd like to see physically dominant teams switch to one-to-one marking more often.
100%.
Like, a zone is really good in that it helps cover for some inefficiencies on defense. Like, if I can't make the stop on this player by myself, being in a zone where somebody can help me is really good. But if I'm physically dominant against my opposition, and as is every other member of my team, why am I giving up that advantage by staying in a zone? Let's go mark them incredibly aggressively, make that very uncomfortable, and let beaters deal with the actual quaffle carrier. You've seen a slight shift to this in terms of teams running LPC's 42 defense, Raptors lock, Bond Rhinos at EQC playing their half-court blitz. Like, when those things work, they're incredibly effective and very hard to play against. And if teams are practicing that more, you're going to see it more often, and actually it could become the new default. If a team is able to match that physicality and overpower the team, it doesn't work if you're worse.
100% agree. I think one-to-one marking for Quidditch is ideal. It just requires a lot of intensity and a lot of stamina. But I'd love to see one-to-one more often. I think it's a real good challenge for both teams and can be really exciting to watch. So yeah, I agree with you there, James. I think it'd definitely liven the game up if teams played some more one-to-one marking. But I think a lot of coaches are reluctant to do it because it can be quite risky. So maybe some more coaches will roll the dice when they're running their team.
It might actually justify having like 21 people on a squad if we were actually running that hard. Whatever.
At the start of your answer, James, you did say if all the rules sort of stay the same. If we're looking at a rule change, what do you think is the sort of next step that would sort of make the most sense to you?
So the one I want to see is two-arm tackling. I don't think that's particularly likely in this cycle, given that there's a World Cup coming up from being delayed, and that's quite a big paradigm shift. Something that I think is more likely to happen is following the MLQ hoop spacing. That means that actually the hoop, rather than being at things like 2 broom lengths apart at the moment, it shifts quite a bit wider. I think, Jay, you know the exact measurements. I can't remember off the top of my head.
I think at the moment it's about 2 meters and a bit, but it moves to closer to 2.8 or 3 or something like that. It basically means it's impossible to cover one player to cover all the hoops.
Yeah. And that creates a lot of opportunity for shooting and stuff. And also just means there's more space. So, like, if my keeper is hedging the middle and the left hoop, one, they're not covering those actually that well at that point because they're so much further apart. But it means they've got no chance of getting across to an unmarked chaser on the other side of the hoops. Like, that's just not a stop the keeper's going to make with any degree of certainty, which makes that kind of pass open a lot more often. It just opens the pitch up a lot more to attacking. I'm not sure how that will work without two-arm tackling, because obviously that's quite a big advantage to the offense. But MLQ balances it by giving two-arm tackling for defense, so I don't know if it will work super well, but I'm excited to see it. High-scoring games are more interesting than 0-0 games in basically any sport. So,
yeah. What about you, Jay?
Yeah, I think the MLQ spacing rules, but also the only being able to tap in on the middle hoop will shut down a lot of lazy zones and people just trying to play Baylor or Aussie Baylor badly. So I'd like to see that because it means you can have the shooting lane more often. I do think some adjustment to the contact rules needs to be made, but I agree in this World Cup cycle, it wouldn't be a decision I disagreed with, but it would be quite a bold decision to drastically change the contact rules and only really give teams 9 months to prepare for it. But outside of that, it's basically what can you do without fundamentally changing the course of the game. Like if you're looking at making the pitches bigger or the hoops smaller, I think they're very micro points. And the game at the moment isn't played well enough consistently to keep changing small rules, I think.
I mean, obviously, I've only been playing a few years, but for me, that massive change about actually having a sideline, I thought that almost legitimized it into a proper, almost proper rules in my head, because I never knew whether I was in or out or what was really going on with those. But now it's pretty straightforward, like every sport. So
on that, there is one change I want to see happen that I think should have been done at the start. Right. So I really like the boundary rules. They make sense. They follow other sports. Okay. So if I step off the pitch on the left or the right or the back, great, it's a turnover. I got that. Why then is it different if I push somebody? Does it not trigger a reset? You've crossed the line. You've gone out of bounds. That's a reset. The fact that I've pushed you shouldn't make any difference.
I agree. The backcourt should be like basketball, where it doesn't matter how you go over the line.
Yeah, you went over it. It was just good defense. Like, why have a different rule for that?
Yeah, you're punishing. You're discouraging tackling in open field, which is the exact opposite of what we should be trying to do. We should be trying to encourage open field tackling. I think if it was down to me as well, I'd have the reset line as the midline, and you didn't get one reset back. I realised when we did play that, it was quite intense. But I think once you're over halfway line, if we're trying to speed the game up, having no reset would really speed the game up, and also encourage teams not to try and run the clock down during things like snitch on pitch or towards the end game. You'd actually have to play some sort of offense.
Yeah, like obviously quite hypocritical coming from us, but yeah, it's boring watching someone run an L.
So I actually agree with both of you on those points as well. So maybe someone's listening can actually give us their sort of opinion. They can send us messages or whatever, or if they can explain why that's the rule. Obviously about being tackle back, whoever. I don't know. Maybe the person that
they want the best defense to just be someone standing just inside the other half, just go boo and scare the other person back, because then it is a reset because you've chosen to be scared and walked over the line. Just nonsense. I don't understand why that one line is different than every other line on the pitch.
A real glaring issue with, while we're getting into the rules, of how that's applied, because there's definitely been Merc tournaments where someone has been marking me and I've wanted to go back into my own half So I've tucked the ball in my dom hand, grabbed them with my non-dominant hand, pulled them into me so it looks like they're stiff-arming me, and walked. Because I just have such a weight advantage over some of the people that are marking me. And because they're forcing me back, because they're touching me, and I really sell it, then that's not a reset, which is bonkers. That is a micro point of the game that does work. And it's just clearing out things like that.
Let's hope the referees aren't listening, Jay, because they'll know about it.
Razzie Erasmus would love that play. You know him. He'd love that.
While we're talking about changes, another question didn't really fit in anywhere. Renaming the sport.
So
that was all it said with a question mark. So do we think it should be renamed? If so, what?
So I looked into this a couple of years back. So I think lots of people agree that changing the name from like an independence point of view, so it's not linked to Warner Brothers and the rights that encompasses, would be a good thing. But the issue is changing the name to anything that even slightly relates to Quidditch just isn't allowed. Like I think they were saying, like you can't call it Quidball. Quadraball is like quite tricky because you can still claim the connection. So I think it'd be great to rename it, but every time someone describes Quidditch, they're going to go, "Oh, I play quadraball. What's that? Have you seen Harry Potter? Do you know what Quidditch is? It's that." Like, Quidditch is still going to be used as the reference point. And I think while there aren't, the disputes with Warner Brothers and Rowling at the moment, it doesn't really help the sport to change it. Like, people think the name's what stops it from being legitimate. But I think there's far more than the name that is slowing the sport down from legitimacy.
I think maybe the name helps as well in some respects.
It definitely does for some. Like, I think it definitely helps, especially in this country initially, with the boom of players. Like, it was Quidditch, it was Harry Potter themed. It got a lot of people who had grown up with the books. And that's always been a pull for some people to get involved. Not everyone, obviously, but it definitely did help. I think as long as you've still got brooms, or poles, whatever you want to call them, it's always going to be Quidditch. If we were going to change, because that's actually the defining thing of it, right? Like the fact you've got this physical impediment to your movement. If you got rid of that, then I'm way more open to it being actually something different. But while we've still got a broom and we're still playing with all the rules of Quidditch from the books, it's Quidditch, just with a more complicated name if you change it. Get rid of the brooms, then it's all good. Then it's a different game. Plays very differently. Now you're some sort of weird hybrid of dodgeball and Aussie rules, which would be banging, but
Yeah, full contact handball is where it's at. That's the dream.
Except we definitely don't want to play with a handball, as we worked out. When there's not a minimum shooting distance, those things hurt.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so that's pretty much wraps up the sort of tactics section. It moves us on to the last one, sort of your views on the game and players and things like that. I think the best one, just to obviously get us started, what is the best player that you have yourselves played with, as both in chasing or quaffle game and at beating? Do you want to go first on the beating, James, and then Jay can go first on the chasing?
Sure. So I'm almost certain that our beaters are the same. So the best beater I think either of us have ever played with is Lucy Q. She is phenomenal at it and has been the best beater in the country, Europe, for a very long time now. Yeah, when she's playing well, she is dominant, and she raises everybody else on her team up a level. You can see that by when she's not playing, that it is much harder for Team UK or for Raptors or whoever her Merc team is when she's somehow, and some reason, subbed off. One of those rare moments. Yeah, Lucy's easily the best beater I've ever played with. And I would imagine that most people have ever played with, given how good she is.
Yeah.
Okay.
For quaffle, do I agree? 100%. Like Lucy's. I think what people don't get about Lucy is she's not just a phenomenal Quidditch player; she's a phenomenal athlete. Like she can put her hand to most sports and be incredibly good.
She's playing dodgeball internationally now, right?
He's playing national dodgeball. And I think people don't appreciate as well for Lucy just how intelligent she is when she's on pitch. Like, people see her as like an erratic offensive threat, and the criticism has been made that Lucy sort of plays on her own and her beater cleans up for them. But I think that's just a very limited way of seeing what she's actually doing. Like, you can't be so destructive and so successful and so risky for such a long time and it not be a calculated move. Like, you're just not lucky for that long. And I think that's just a really underrated part of Lucy's game is just how smart she is. No one ever talks about that when they talk about the best players. They never say, oh, their reading of the game is fantastic, or their ability to make interceptions is fantastic. It's always, oh, they're really quick, or oh, they really throw really well, or oh, they're a really good leader. But it's never actually about game intelligence. And I think that's where Lucy has got most people locked up.
Cool. So if you want to carry on then, what about Chaser? Best Chaser you've ever played with? Or
So I think my answer is going to be different to James. Not having played national Quidditch, it's obviously limited me to like club, some Merc and QPL. The guy that I've played with loads that I always enjoy playing with is Andrew. I think Andrew's a fantastic quaffle player.
Andrew Hull, right?
Hull, yes, Andrew Hull. And like,
not for me. I know who he is. I've played with him too.
Like, I've learned a lot from him. He's a real good team man, and can be very diverse with his approach to playing. But I just enjoy having him around. But also, I've played with Gemma Thrick just once, and even though me and Gemma have clashed sometimes, playing together, I really enjoyed it, and it went really well. She fills in roles so perfectly that most coaches are afraid to give their women, or have only just started to give their women, whereas Gemma was a confident ball handler, a confident tackler so far before that. And yeah, I absolutely adored playing with Gemma when I had the chance.
Okay, James?
So mine's closer. I think a couple of people I've played with have been very, very good. The most effective player I think I've played with is Tom Stevens. He is dynamic and destructive when he's on form. It was just really interesting to see him develop as a player over like a couple of seasons. The amount of feedback he would take on and then immediately use to just constantly be trying to improve himself. He was passionate. He would drive other people around him. And just athletically is phenomenal. The explosive power in his driving, his tackling, he does everything with 100% commitment, and just makes everyone else around him better.
I think what was fantastic about Tom is he was never showy with his dedication. So there are some players that dedicate really hard and then outwardly say to people like, come on, you're not trying as hard as me, look at what I'm doing, blah 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 blah. That's really irritating. Whereas Tom would work, probably one of the hardest working athletes I've ever seen, but everyone just noticed. Tom didn't bring attention to it, but everyone just knew that Tom was the hardest worker, and that if you wanted to get to his level, you'd have to work hard. And Tom respected you regardless of how much effort you put in and regardless of how hard you tried. But what made Tom excellent is that everyone wanted to be as dedicated as Tom. And everyone said, I wish I could be like Tom with how dedicated I am. And I think that's a massive compliment to him as a man, let alone as a player.
That's nice. So, I mean, you've obviously mentioned some of the best ones that you guys have played with. Sort of knocking around at the moment, who do you think are the kind of most underrated players in the sort of UK at the moment?
So,
James, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so that's fine. For reference, underrated doesn't mean is
Bad.
bad. You can be very good and be underrated because, like, it just means they don't think you're as good as you should be.
Yeah, I'm not saying people that.
Yeah. I'm just being clear.
Good are actually awful.
Similarly, like, if you're not known, that kind of means you're underrated because you're not known, but it's not meant to be a diss. Most underrated player.
Jay, have you got one?
Yeah, I've got a couple.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
So I'll rattle a few names off. I think Mateo Baraclough, who is a receiver for Southampton at the moment, I believe, gets incredibly underrated for how people see Mateo's personality. But I think when partnered with an excellent ball carrier, is a real offensive threat. And I just think when they're in the right setup, they're very good, but no one's ever really calling them out except when they're the key piece of an offense. Tua Carling for LQC, previously Team Finland and Team UK. I appreciate saying you can argue how can a Team UK player be underrated, but as we said, just because people think you're good doesn't mean they actually see your worth. Tua's fundamentals are fantastic, and the way she compensates for her small stature by intelligently reading the ball and body position on defense and offense is really, really impressive. But it's not the sort of thing that shows up on highlight film, and that's not the sort of thing you notice. It's sort of like the intangibles as well. One that I imagine James will say is Ben Guthrie. Ben Guthrie, beater, chaser, keeper. What a man. One of the most silent men I've ever met, and he looks like a strong gust of wind to kill him. But he is an all-round force, on ball, off ball, fundamentally. And he's another one. He's just a great guy to have on your team. He doesn't need to speak for you to know how he's feeling. And I just think because he's not incredibly vocal in the community, a lot of people don't appreciate his worth as a player.
Yeah. What about you, James? Anyone?
Guthrie's definitely a great shout. Just actually is way better than his presence would let you think. So I think who gets overlooked, despite being quite good still, on our team is Gabriel Hall-Raptor. He is very good, but he gets overlooked because he's on a team with Lucy, Mikey, Dan, Bill, world class, top level national team beaters.
Anywhere else, he'd be by far the best player.
Anyone to be the best beater on their team, but because he's surrounded there, he gets overlooked. I mean, it happens at our trainings. We go, oh, that team's got Lucy, that team's got Mikey. Damn. Well, actually, no, we've got Gabri. That's really good. He works very hard. He plays to his strengths. He's a good team player in that he covers for his beaters when they make a mistake. He's physical in a way that a lot of beaters I don't think are. He's very happy to throw in a tackle. Gabri for me is underrated for how good he is, purely because of who he's around.
Yeah, nice. So obviously we've been talking about some of sort of your best players there. I already know the answer to this one, but I'll ask it anyway. Who do you think is the best player worldwide ever?
Oggy Monroe.
And yeah, that's agreed with by you as well, yeah, Jay.
That's agreed. I mean, everyone sort of in the community universally agrees that Oggy's the best. I think what always entertains me about Quidditch in general is people have very strong opinions on who they think is good, despite having never seen someone play or actually not knowing who a person is. So most UK players will say Oggy Monroe is the best player in the world, having no idea who he is. And I think that's quite a testament in itself if people think you're the greatest player ever and have no idea who you are. But I think Oggy, as an all-round player, has been around for such a long time, grown with the game, diversified with the game, maybe not always the most dominant in specific roles, but all-round as a talent, he's who you're starting your team with regardless. And I think there's no bigger
be a little bit a victim of his own success to a degree because he's so good as a utility player. Quaffle or beating. When he swaps, because he does a lot of beating snitch on pitch, his Quaffle team quite often misses him. but he's such a good beater, you have to put him there, and vice versa when he's chasing or keeping, when he's quaffling, his beater call doesn't have him, and it's a bit it's a bit awkward that he's that good in every position.
What I say though is that, like, I think what shows Team USA's amazing depth is Monroe went down in the first game. Archibald goes to starting team keeper, dominates the tournament, and no one talks about just how good Jake Archibald is. Like,
yeah,
he's fantastic.
I think that's the point. I don't think Oggy is the best quaffle player. I think he's the best Quidditch player. So you can have an argument for, like, Callum Mayling for Australia is the best quaffle player in his destructive brilliance. But as far as I'm aware, Callum can't beat. So if I had to pick a player to be on my team, a Quidditch player, I would pick Oggy, because then whoever the other 5 people I have on pitch with him, doesn't matter. I've still got one of the best players in a position regardless.
100%.
Yeah, so that's some more people really that obviously all that we've been through there. If you can see any of their videos, we're talking in the last one about people to watch, things to see, things to look out for if you want to improve. So watching any of them is probably going to be helpful as well, would you say?
Oh, for definite. Like, if you have an interest in the game, watching the best people do it should be what you're in for. Like, yeah, like if you like football, you watch the Premiership. You might go and support the local village team, but it's not who you go
to learn.
To learn how to play.
Cool. Okay, so if you were to be building yourself a player on the, sort of like you do on FIFA and things like that, what kind of attributes are you looking for your player to be on your team?
So I'm going, first of all, for the most important thing, I think, is game intelligence. I think everything else you can kind of teach. So you can set somebody a fitness routine and go get them strong, fast, jumpy, whatever. But if they don't understand the game, then it's pointless. You're going to have to divert other resources to that. So yeah, game intelligence, knowing the game well, is my first thing if I'm trying to build someone. The next thing would be a desire to win. It's amazing how much just wanting to be better than your opponent will drive you forwards. It makes up for a lot of shortcomings in other areas. It gives you that 5-10% extra boost near the end of the game. It's like, well, I refuse to lose in this situation. I'm going to keep going. For definite. Next is, I think, a desire to improve, not resting on your laurels, wanting to get better all the time and taking on feedback, going out, looking at how you can do it. And that might well be going to the gym. It might be looking at your diet, or just going and asking other people how I can get better. One of the reasons I think Tom was so good, as alluded to earlier, is he did all these things. And then I think after that, you then look at your technical skills, your throwing, your catching, your spacing, and those things you develop after you've got the mind, you can build the body functionally. I think it's way, way harder to do it the other way around. You see very few people in Quidditch who are new to sport in general be good, whereas you see a lot of people who have played other sports to some degree and then applied what they know to Quidditch. Not universal, but I'd say the vast majority of good players are that way around.
Jay, anything different in your sort of ideas there?
No, I agree. I think game IQ is the first thing. Like, everything else can be taught, learned, or improved, but it's very hard to, if people don't have the exposure and the intelligence for the sport, it's very, very hard to teach it quickly. It can be taught over a long period of time, but it's also just quite frustrating to teach because there's no real measure. They either get it or they don't. The main thing is I'd look for, so I'd build a counter-attacking keeper, would be, so game IQ, acceleration over speed. I don't need them to be the quickest person on the Quidditch pitch. I just need them to get to their top speed fairly quickly. The ability to break a tackle, I think, is massively underrated. Yes, there's not a great deal of contact, but if you can shrug contact off and just worm your way through it, that makes life so much easier.
Just on that point, I've always felt that, like, breaking contact where is it? Obviously, it seems quite a lot physical. For me, I think there's quite a big mental side of it as well. If you really want to not be tackled, then you can keep going. I don't know what you guys think about that. I've always thought it's quite a lot of a mental side.
I think it's definitely mindset. Like, I'm definitely not the biggest player in the world, but like Bex often says, no one wants to score the goal more than I do. And I think that's probably true. Like, that does just push you that extra couple of steps through contact, or that extra step round a player to make the spin, to make the push off the side step, whatever. Like, I think most things come down to mental attributes in that regard.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, isn't it? So no matter where you start, as long as you've got the right mindset, certainly in what you guys think, that you can build the rest around it. Okay, so just one last question that we're going to finish on. Someone's asked what you think the best signature moves from players are. I'm not. Yeah, I mean, is there anything that sort of sticks out in your mind that you see people do that?
Consistently catching the ball is the best signature move in Quidditch. More people should try and develop it.
I think
Okay.
there's a few players that have like some signature moves, but I don't know. Like, I've got mine. People rag on me for the fake shot and the fake pass all the time, and they say, "Oh my God, they're so easy to read. Why do you still do it?" It sells.
Well, if people buy it, you're going to keep selling it, I suppose,
yeah,
Jay.
it sells 95% of the people I've played for the past 4 years. And the fact that you hate it doesn't matter. Like, it works, especially in that 2 meter spread, like we said. Once you've got someone out of position, it's easy. And you see that a lot. Like, Seb Walters has the step fake with his head. Bill Orridge has his enormous, powerful pump fake that he does. I think you see a lot of good players and me try and use the fake quite often to try and benefit themselves. But yeah, I don't think there's many yet. Like, there's not enough consistent shooters or tacklers. Like, if Ben Malpass starts kicking it in on the reg, then props to him. He should try that. But yeah, I don't know.
All right, lovely. Thanks. Well, that's pretty much it for the questions. I just say, if anyone does have any questions that they want to send in, then send them to us, and I'll ask these guys. As I say, they seem to know one or two things about this sport. If you have any things that you really want us to talk about, maybe do a whole video for, send that to us as well. We'll see if we can work it in. We've got planned. We've got lots of things in the pipeline coming up. But that is it for our mailbag episode. So thanks, James.
Hi.
And Jay.
Thank you.
And we'll see you all next time. Bye.